Good evening again, everyone. My name is Rick Bowden, and I am president of the Pinckney-Putnam Hamburg-Hell Chamber of Commerce. And like we've talked earlier, this is our last segment, but like we talked earlier, this is the candidate forum that we are filming on July 20th. And this year we are having this at the Jane Tesh Theater. We usually do these at Hamburg Township, but for social distancing, Pinckney Schools let us use this facility. And we were able to invite everybody, and then we've got this being filmed to be able to share during on social media and other locations. So this will be shared there. We put this on, and remember that all the candidates tonight that were invited were only in contested positions. So the next session that we have is these are representatives for the 8th District on the Republican side. There is a candidate running on the Democrat side, but she is unopposed in the primary, so she was not invited for tonight because she's unopposed. So, but she will be invited when we have the event, the candidate forum for the general election. So tonight we have 3 candidates out of 4 for the representative in Congress for the 8th District. We have 4 candidates. It's Mike Detmer, Alan Hoover, Paul Jung, and Kristina Lyke. I may as well do this part first, but one of the policies we always have is that if a candidate cannot be with us for the evening, I say that I can have someone or I can read a statement. So the other candidate asked for me to read this statement, so I'm going to read it, and I'm just reading it as a total unbiased person. Thank you to the Pinckney-Putnam Hamburg-Hell Chamber of Commerce for hosting this forum and offering the opportunity to submit a statement. With just over 2 weeks until the primary, there are many events each day, and it is unfortunate that I am unable to attend all of them. My family has experienced the American dream, growing up in Michigan's middle class before my father started a business maintaining military family housing on bases throughout the country. I have served as a deputy district attorney, prosecuting domestic abusers, anchored the news at Fox 47 in Lansing, earned a graduate degree from the University of Michigan, and worked on Terry Lynn Land's 2014 Senate campaign. Most recently, I served in the Trump administration at U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services, working to crack down on illegal immigration. I am running for Congress to be a conservative leader who will put America first. Coronavirus hit Michigan hard, so I look forward to working with President Trump to rebuild our economy. We will encourage job creation and higher incomes with more freedom and lower taxes. We need to stand up to communist China by ensuring trade deals put America first, building an American supply chain for critical medications, and holding China accountable for COVID. I will work to secure our borders and ban sanctuary cities, fund our police, defend our Second Amendment rights, and let me be clear, life is a precious gift from God we have a responsibility to protect. My campaign is blessed to have the endorsement of several local and national leaders, including Livingston County Sheriff Mike Murphy, Congressman Tim Walberg, Bill Rogers, and the Detroit News. Next week, former Speaker Newt Gingrich will be hosting an event for me next week through the NRCC Young Guns program. I asked for your vote in the Republican primary for Congress on August 4th. You can learn more about my campaign through my website, pauljung.com. That's PAULJUNGE.com. You can also email us at pauljungforcongress@gmail.com. As your representative, I will support the values that make our country strong and rebuild our economy. Together we can make the House Republican again. Thank you. That is a letter from Paul Jung, who is a candidate, could not be with us this evening. So the 3 candidates we have with us, first we will hear from Mike Detmer.
Good evening, everybody. First, I want to thank you and the Chamber for hosting this and holding this event. This has been going on for a long time, I believe 20 years. And it's important to know that the 3 candidates that are here tonight understand that. We're from Michigan and we wouldn't miss this. In fact, we did manage to do both events tonight and we made it back in time to make sure that we're all here to talk to all of you. We are in a war for the heart, the soul, the traditions, and the freedoms of our state and our nation. And this is not a time for politics as usual. We've got to send a fighter to Washington, D.C. who actually gets it. Somebody who's going to be accountable to you, the voters. Somebody who understands that the voters are the employer. You hold the power, not the politicians in Washington, D.C. But we've also got to have an action plan. One thing that I've done is roll out my contract with Michigan, which it's about being accountable to you, but it's also an itemized list of things that are going to start happening on day one. But these aren't just talking points and platitudes. These are actual workable solutions that we can start on, things that we can go fight for. Our economy, Michigan could be an absolute powerhouse again, and I've said this for a long time. From our industry to manufacturing, mining, logging, we have the resources, we've got the people power, and we've got the infrastructure. We just have to stop the stupid to get it there. Healthcare is a huge issue right now. We need to get healthcare back out of the hands of the federal government and back to the states, back to the people, patients, and their doctors. It's time that we have truth in advertising, that we know what medical providers are going to charge for any particular service. But we've also got to make sure that pre-existing conditions are covered. We've got to make sure that mental health is covered without raising taxes and without adding to the national debt. Border security is another huge issue. We've got to make sure that we close our southern border, and I've advocated for all 1,000 miles of the wall that our president initially asked for, not just a few hundred. We've got to make sure that we've got enough border security agents in place to stop this, really not just the illegal immigration, but we also have a drug problem. Drugs and fentanyl are killing this country, and they're really affecting Michigan. We're losing over 2,000 people a year to fentanyl overdoses, and we can shut that off. But moreover than that, Michigan's a border state. We have a major sex trafficking issue going on right now that we need to get control of and shut down. I'm also a big proponent and fighter for our Second Amendment. I'm the only candidate on this panel who's actually been out there to fight to, number one, turn Livingston County to a 2A sanctuary county. I've been outspoken Lansing and across the state defending our Second Amendment rights when in the rest of the country we had big issues like red flag laws that are happening not just here but across the country in Washington, D.C. And I've made it very clear red flag laws are dead on arrival. We've also got to protect the unborn. We've got to have somebody who's going to fight for the unborn, the voiceless, and also the born. I'm the only candidate up here as well that was endorsed by the Michigan Right to Life and Michigan Heartbeat Coalition because of my commitment to save our kids. Ladies and gentlemen, the power rests with you. In just a very short amount of time, really days, you're going to have a decision to make. Who's going to go on to the next level? Who will take on Alyssa Slotman? We've got to have constitutional patriots in Washington, D.C. that understand that our elected officials are beholden to God, the Constitution, and you, the people, not to special interests. And that's exactly what I'll do. I'll go fight every single day, just like I have every single day against this governor and her tyrannical, biased, unconstitutional executive orders. I've been out front and behind the scenes to make sure that our state gets opened back up. And I'll have that same fight in Washington, D.C. Thank you again for your consideration. Whether it's absentee ballot or voting at the polls, I'd sure like your support. Thank you.
Our next candidate is Kristina Lyke.
Thank you. My name is Kristina Lyke, and I am called the hometown girl, and I want to let you know I am from Pinckney, so it is a pleasure to be here tonight. I graduated from this high school in 1994. I walked the hallways here. I remember a lot of my friends here. My friends came together to get the petition so that I could be on the ballot. Pinckney does that. They rally together, and I'm very proud to have the classmates that I have. I want to tell you a little bit about myself. As a litigator, I have been fighting all my life. Throughout the last 15 years as an attorney, I opened up my small business. I fought hard for individuals who, for instance, a First Amendment issue, a little girl had a Trump pen removed forcibly by a teacher. I've also fought for domestic violence victims. I fought for the Second Amendment. I'm the only candidate up here that actually has gotten orders to have guns returned back to the individuals. My dad was a local gun dealer in the village of Pinckney, so it's very dear to my heart, the Second Amendment. I received my first scholarship from a gun club, so I wanted to become an attorney because of the fact is I wanted to protect the Second Amendment. I learned the faith through my mother, and that's the reason why the First Amendment is so important to me. I believe that we need to have God back into our country, and we need to make sure that we have God prevailing again. I also fought for our veterans that are returning home for their country, returning home to our country, the United States. I've also fought for people who just needed a second chance in life. And now I want to go to Congress to fight for you. I am sick and tired of the socialism. I'm sick and tired of individuals chipping away at our constitutional rights. We saw during this COVID pandemic the First Amendment being chipped away. We saw the Second Amendment being chipped away by gun stores being closed. I say enough. The constitutional rights, from the very get-go of my campaign, I said the constitutional rights are the very heart and soul of America. And we need to make sure that we protect our liberties and our freedoms. And I will do that. I always have done that, and I always will. I also want to let you know that I am a huge supporter of the police officers. At age 19, I was the village trustee for the village of Pinckney. I was the youngest member that was ever elected, and I was the only female on the board. Just like now, I'm the only female up here running as a candidate. I fought hard. We got the raise for the police officers, and I'm very proud of that. We need to make sure that we do not defund the police officers. We need to make sure that we give them support. I surely believe in the First Amendment, and there may be things that I may not agree with you, but I will protect that right to the day that I die. That's Voltron. The point is that I will not protect the looting, the malice, the burning down buildings, or going and shooting officers. That is wrong. That is called illegal, and it's also malicious destruction of property, and it's also called murder. I will let you know too, I'm the only candidate up here that actually has talked about China. And China is deceptive. We need to make sure that all manufactured drugs from China are sent back right here to the United States, especially the 8th Congressional District. We can provide jobs right here in our 8th Congressional District, and we can make sure that the Americans are safe. And guess what? We have the resources to do that right here in the 8th Congressional District. And I will make sure that we do that. The second thing is that our governor did not protect the elderly. In fact, those were the vulnerable individuals during this COVID process. We need to make sure that we protect the unborn, the elderly. I am endorsed by the Right to Life, and I want to make sure that we protect our elderly because the fact is what the governor did was attempted murder, and also gross negligence to the elderly who are considered vulnerable by placing the individuals in assisted living and also into the nursing homes. We will no longer have that. I want to make sure we have a national registry list for the elderly and make sure that we keep our freedoms, and I want to make sure that we keep our liberties for those elderly people. But we want to have a national registry list, and that national registry list is going to protect the vulnerable by the caretakers coming into their house. We do not want these individuals getting scared by who's taking care of them or who is actually going to harm them. So we will have a national registry list. And I see that my time is gone, and I thank you, and God bless you.
Our third candidate tonight is Alan Hoover.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Alan Hoover. I was born in the state of Michigan, raised by a single mother with two younger sisters. My grandfather was Herbert Harold Hoover, which was the Golden Glove boxing champion out of Grand Rapids. Him and his brother served in the Korean War in the Navy. My other grandfather, my grandfather Tope, served in World War II. My father, Alan Harold Hoover, was a Marine Corps veteran during Vietnam. With that, the relationship between my father and the experiences of that of a Vietnam veteran resulted in my father and my mother being separated. So I grew up with a single mother with two younger sisters across 16 different cities in the state of Michigan, between both Oakland County and Wayne County. I know what it's like to come from nothing because I've been and lived in extreme poverty. My mother refusing to spend her entire life on welfare, to be a person who was feeding and living off of your tax dollars. Too prideful to do that in her entire life despite raising 3 children. Worked as a medical assistant and a taxi cab driver. When I graduated high school, I went straight to the Marine Corps. I went to the Marine Corps Reserves, and I served there for 20 years. And I volunteered for 5 deployments. I did 19 operations, combat support, 19 operations around the globe. Served in the Middle East, served in Africa, and I served in Southeast Asia. Now I'm here today running for Congress because as a Marine and an American citizen who understands the Constitution, just like these other 2 candidates up here that understand the Constitution, I'm looking and seeing today. And our Constitution is not being preserved. Instead, I'm seeing the tenets of Marxism and communism in place here in the United States of America. The abolishment of private property. Our federal government owns more land now than it has in the entire history of the United States of America. The income tax has become so heavily progressive. There are states where citizens are paying in excess of 40%. The abolition of inheritance hasn't happened yet, but they are making plans and they are maneuvering themselves to take that from you as well. We already have a central bank that also bought all of our home mortgages during the COVID-19 crisis. The government control of communications and transportation. The previous president made sure that every single person in this nation had a cell phone. They might go to bed without food in their stomach, but hey, they got a cell phone and a connection to the internet. Believe it or not, the government is mandating and heavily involved in our communications. Our transportation systems as well are controlled by the government. The government does not have control of our factories and agriculture yet, but they are shutting them down. As we saw with NAFTA. When NAFTA was put in place by a particular and specific Speaker of the House who claimed to be a conservative Republican with Bill Clinton, that resulted in an abundant amount of factories from the state of Michigan being flushed down the drain and arriving on the shores of China, an enemy of the United States of America. To where now our prescription drugs, our tier 1, 2, and 3, and 4 suppliers, parts are made and manufactured in China and then shipped back over here. In which case, we have an abundant amount of debt to China. And China now has a massive growing military, and there's talks about a potential war between the United States and China. That is what the establishment has done through the guise of Marxism. They are not preserving the Constitution. Additionally, Marxism calls for corporate farms and regional planning. And the last tenet of the 10 tenets is what? Central control of education. And despite the massive amount of funds, the massive amount of money that we've thrown in the education system going back to the 70s, when the Department of Education was first brought to the federal government, it has done nothing but gave us poorer and worse results. Now we see 20-year-olds that have gone through this socialistic, communistic, Marxist education system, forming together in groups such as Antifa and BLM and destroying our communities. I am Alan Hoover. I served as a Marine for 20 years and 5 deployments. I see the tides of war coming. And if you send me to Congress, I will preserve the Constitution, and then I will defend it. Oops, sorry, that's my timer. That's my 5 minutes. Thank you.
Alan, since you went last, let's go first, and then we're going to have our questions. And if each of you can keep it to about a minute, minute and a half. And honestly, if somebody has said something else, you just say, hey, I agree, so because we got a lot of questions to go through. So, Alan, the first question is, prior to COVID, our economy under the current president was strong. Tell us about why you feel it was so strong and what we can do to recover now with what our country's gone through.
President Trump has personally built the strongest economy that we have seen in our lifetime. Despite NAFTA and establishment candidates and globalists on both the Democratic and Republican sides of both of those aisles, working in regards to internationalists. Despite all of that, President Trump rebuilt our economy. By doing what? By following the Constitution of the United States, by reducing federal control, by reducing the power of the federal government, by reducing federal taxes. This right here is what caused our economy to flourish. And now we see COVID-19 being flushed into our nation here from China, the same country that absorbed all of our manufacturing facilities when NAFTA happened. And when did it happen? Right after the USMCA deal that President Trump fought to get put in place. So as soon as we start getting a leg up on America's economy against China, what happens? We get a COVID-19 massive shutdown, which is what? Trying to destroy the economy that President Trump has built. You send me to Congress, I'm going to fight to defend our nation, preserve the Constitution, and ensure that our economy is strong again. Thank you.
Okay, we'll pass it down, and Mike, same question.
Thank you. So the reason that our economy became so strong, number one, elected officials do not create jobs. The president does not create jobs. Congress does not create jobs. What they can do, however, is get out of the way of free market. That creates jobs. That's exactly what our president did. Pulling us out of NAFTA, pulling us out of a lot of these really terrible trade deals allowed this country to start to come back. I think one thing that COVID has proven to us is we can no longer, as a nation, be reliant on imports. For far too long, our elected officials have made terrible trade deals, which have really devastated this state by shipping all of our manufacturing overseas, cheap labor. We've got to bring that back. Michigan, again, can be an absolute powerhouse. We can bring pharmaceuticals back. Besides just the automotive sector, Michigan can actually handle most of the industry that we see. Manufacturing from drugs to automotive to you name it. If you're going to build widgets, we can do it. But that's what has to happen. In the wake of COVID, we've got to get this state back open again. And that's one thing that I've been out there fighting for the last several months, is to fight this governor. I've been asked the question before, well, what would you have done different in the wake of COVID? Well, the first thing to do is you don't defy the Constitution or the Bill of Rights. When Governor Whitmer shut down churches, she shut down businesses, she violated the First Amendment, the Fourth Amendment. That's terrible. It's up to the businesses and the people to use common sense. So we have to keep Michigan open. We've got to encourage businesses to be open. That's how we rebuild this economy. Stop living in fear, start living by faith, and let's roll. Thank you.
Prior to COVID, our economy under the current president was strong. Tell us about why you think it grew so well and what can be done now that COVID is here.
Thank you. First of all, President Trump kept his promises. He was out there every day during 2016 stating, America first, America first. And that's what we need to do, is place America first. But as your congresswoman, what I would do is also put Michigan first, the 8th Congressional District first. Too long we have not had the 8th District be first. We've had individuals representing ourselves that didn't really represent us. They actually represented Nancy Pelosi. And we have one right now, Alyssa Slotkin, that marches to the tune of Nancy Pelosi, just marches right on to her orders. I will not be like that. As to your question with President Trump, it was less regulations. The less regulations, passing the tax bill was just incredible. We had a record number of unemployment for women, Latinos, and African Americans. And we were so proud. We were moving around at a record low unemployment. And we can do that again. One of the things I envision is making sure that we hold China accountable. They are full of deceit. It's not the people there, but it is the country itself. We need to make sure that we have the manufacturing drugs not made there, the vital drugs that they said that they were going to stop sending them to America. We're going to bring those drugs right back to here in America, and right here to the 8th Congressional District. And this will keep the Americans safe, keep them healthy, and also bring back jobs. We can do that in Rochester, we can do it at MSU, and we can do it at other locations as well. Thank you.
Okay, the next question, because you already answered that one. So, Mike, why don't you go first on the next one then? The next question is regarding healthcare. Do you have a plan to do something about our broken healthcare system? And if so, please give details.
Yes. Healthcare is on my contract with Michigan, and again, this goes back to accountability. Healthcare is huge, and that's one of the biggest complaints or conversations that I have with voters is that healthcare is unaffordable, prescription drugs are unaffordable. But one thing that we have to do is bring healthcare back to the private sector and get it out of the hands of the federal government. Single-payer healthcare cannot work. We've seen it. We saw what happened with Obamacare. It's an absolute abject disaster. So I do have a plan. It's a detailed plan. I actually adopted part of my plan from the Heritage Foundation, but I also included pre-existing conditions and mental health. And we can do that through some block grants from the federal government, money that's already there. So we're not going to add to the national debt or raise taxes to do it, to cover things like pre-existing conditions, to cover things like mental health care that normal insurance plans, a lot of insurance plans, will not cover. Are we saying time's up?
No, I was getting some feedback.
Oh, sorry about that. But that's it. We have to have a detailed plan. But take a look. If you go to my website, www.electmikedetmer.com, you can read my entire healthcare plan in detail, in depth, and how we bring it back. Beyond that, healthcare needs to be transparent. Consumers need to have the ability to see what a procedure is going to cost, what their care is going to be cost. And a big question is, well, Mike, what does it matter? My insurance is going to pay for it anyway. But if you have the choice as a consumer of where you're going to have a procedure done, what health system you're going to pick based on what their pricing is, then you can make some decisions that will help bring your health care costs down, help bring your deductibles down, your premiums down. But that's also bringing it back to a free market system. So I believe we'll absolutely have a lot better situation than what we've got right now with this hybrid Obamacare disaster that we're dealing with. Thank you.
Kristina?
Thank you. The first thing is I want to make it clear, we're not going to have health care for all. That is going to be too costly for the American people. It's going to cost millions and millions and trillions of dollars that Americans cannot afford. In fact, we will not have the elderly taken care of if we have health care for all. We saw this during the COVID process when over in Italy, they were not allowing respirators for the elderly. When we also saw our governors, our Democratic governors, taking upon themselves to place these COVID patients right into the nursing homes and the assisted living places. Why did they do that? President Trump went and sent them a hospital. There was one right there at the Cova Hall, and Governor Whitmer could have easily used that hospital. But instead, patients were sent over to Livingston County right here. And that's shameful. We need to make sure that we protect the elderly. Also, I want to make sure that we cover any and all pre-existing conditions. And we need to let the free market work on this individual health care plan. The other thing is this, we need to make sure that whatever we do, we have so many experts right here in our 8th Congressional District. I've talked to doctors over the phone. I've met with pharmacists. I've also talked to different nurses. We have the experts right here in our 8th Congressional District, but nobody talks to them. But I did during the COVID process. I actually delivered donuts to the police officers during the COVID pandemic. And I talked to them, and I talked to the paramedics and the ambulance drivers and also the firemen. I also talked to the other police officers in different districts, in the different counties. And I found out many things that we can do to help. And I see that my time is out right now.
All right, so I have a bill drafted, and I call it the Healthcare Transparency Bill. And what this does is it brings fair trade to the medical sector as well. Why is it that in the United States of America, the healthcare sector, the medical sector gets a pass when it comes to their relationship with consumers? You go to buy a new car, you know how much the vehicle costs before you sign the contract to buy it. You go to the grocery store, you know how much the goods are before you agree to buy them. It's like that with every industry in the United States of America, except for the healthcare and the medical sector. And this bill will bring fair trade and hold them to the same standard that every other industry within the United States of America is held to. The next piece is that we turn it into a true capitalistic perspective by what? Knocking down these regulations that are in place that keep you from being able to use insurance companies from other states. The Constitution already says that every state is able to reciprocate what the laws are in their state. So with that, why do we have isolated healthcare programs that are different in each one of the states? If you buy a vehicle from Ford Motor Company in Texas or out of Illinois or out of Michigan, you can drive that vehicle anywhere in the Union. You should be able to purchase a health insurance program from any one of the states as well. So we need to get rid of the regulations. So that way we have a true free capitalistic environment, and we need to hold the medical sector to the same trade standards so that their prices are transparent, so that way you as the consumer know when you need to get a specific drug, you can choose the drug that's best for your purse.
Kristina, you'll go next. You'll go first on the next one. What can our businesses do to push back on Governor Whitmer's executive orders that threaten them? What can our businesses do to push back on Whitmer's executive orders that threaten them?
Well, first of all, I would say this: the businesses need to make sure they remain open. But the thing of it is that I want to go back to originally when Congress came back to work. When did they come back? This week. During that whole pandemic, we actually did not get the results that we needed from Congress. They did not get there in enough time. What happened here is we had individuals prolonging it. They were actually adding things to the bill, and they were supposed to be passing something for the small businesses, and they didn't get that passed in a timely manner. In fact, they don't have any accountability for those small businesses, and the unemployment was just, there's a lot of fraud that's going to happen there. But as businesses, we need to make sure, this is what I proposed a while back. I wanted to make sure that instead of spending the money we did spend on the CARES Act in Congress, we needed to actually have thermal scanners placed into the businesses so that people could come in and see what the temperature is of that individual person and make sure that they were healthy and safe so that we could remain open. I believe that if we have businesses that would commit to do this, we will remain being healthy, safe, and also the governor cannot say things. And the other thing is, I will commend the barber here in Michigan. I believe that the barber did an excellent job, and we need to make sure that we go and support those individuals that are trying to keep open, especially the hairstylist.
So you as a Michigan citizen, the first thing you can do is reach out to your state representative, not your federal congressman, but your state representative, and you get them to go to Lansing on the floor and file a motion to either A, pull the governor's powers away that she's already extended beyond what the legislation voted in the first place, or B, to file an official impeachment investigation. That's what you can do right now. So reach out to your state representative and pressure them to do exactly what they're supposed to be doing, and that is defending the Michigan Constitution, as well as protecting you as an American citizen and a Michigan resident. The next thing is President Trump's already taken a step towards making sure that we don't shut down our businesses again in the future over the flu or the COVID or whatever else China wants to throw at us. And he's done this by starting to remove us from the World Health Organization, which is another Marxist and communist program where it's a centralized power focal point of a centralized government that is on the internationalist agenda to destroy constitutional values. You cannot be a constitutionalist and an internationalist. You are either a constitutionalist or an internationalist. So President Trump is removing us from the World Health Organization. That right there will make sure that we are not forced into a situation like we were forced in here.
And I believe your question was, what can businesses do?
What can businesses do to push back on Whitmer's executive orders and threats on them?
Open your doors. Open your doors. Keep in mind that the people of Michigan you're the boss. You hold the power. Our elected officials are beholden to us. Businesses have the right to make whatever requirement they want to make on any patrons. So if that's requiring patrons to come in and wear masks, gloves, or hazmat suit, Whatever they want to do, that's up to them. Consumers have the same freedom to not do business if they don't want to wear a mask. I don't believe in spending taxpayer money for thermal scanners or requiring businesses to have thermal scanners and spend money that they don't have. This has been very, very hard on businesses, small businesses all across the state and really across this country. Specifically here in the 8th District, I can't tell you how many small business owners I've talked to that are on the threshold of going out of business because of this, that weren't able to get the help federally that they needed because our governor stalled for up to 2 weeks, over 2 weeks, before she allowed a declaration of disaster to be declared. So businesses, open your doors. If you're worried about the governor taking your license and you're at the brink, open up. Open up. Stay open. There's rumors now that our governor may try to close the state once again. Stay open. We have you. The people of Michigan are behind you. We'll do business with you, but keep your doors open. We have to. We have to defeat tyranny, and that's the only way we can do it is if we together stand strong and stand up. And I'll be with you every step of the way. Thank you.
Alan, you'll go first on the next one. Okay, Alan, what are your thoughts on career politicians and the amount of money that politicians earn in their job and how wealthy they become while they're in office?
So I'm an advocate for term limits. Okay, I believe that we should have no more than 12 in the Congress. So 12 years on the lower chamber or 12 years on the upper chamber. I also believe that my foreign aid reform program is going to rid corruption and keep what you just brought up from happening. The way that the foreign aid is currently set up is that we send billions of dollars to other countries. And when we send these billions of dollars to other countries, these countries that get this money, there's no accountability because we gave them the check, we gave them the money full of cash, and they can do whatever they want. They can kick it back to a senator's kid, they can kick it back to the senator, they can kick it back to a business, they can kick it back to their friends. There's no accountability. But my foreign aid reform bill will take our American businesses, which have employment identification numbers, their EINs, and it'll put you in a database. So instead of giving Ukraine $1 billion in cash, we'll give them $1 billion in credit. And what they'll do is, if they need 200,000 vehicles for their army, well, they're gonna have to buy them from Ford or GM or some other American company. If they need construction materials, you're gonna have to buy them from US-based construction companies. So now the foreign aid program in our federal government, in our Congress, sends that money to American businesses, which then through reciprocity we'll see increase in jobs. We'll also see more tax dollars being generated so we can start chipping away at that deficit. So at the end of the day, if we want to rig corruption and keep politicians from going in there with lint in their pocket and coming out with millions of dollars in the bank, we need to take foreign aid and reform it so that it works for the American citizen.
So to answer your question, term limits, I signed the U.S. Term Limits Amendment Pledge back in November, and that actually limits members of the U.S. House to 3 consecutive terms, or 3 terms total, which is 6 years, and 2 terms in the U.S. Senate. This is one thing that under the Newt Gingrich's Congress back in the 90s, that was one item on the contract with America that never passed, was term limits. So politicians are very reluctant to write themselves out of the job. So I've been public and been very vocal about the fact that if I cannot get anybody to buy in the House to pass an amendment to the Constitution limiting those terms, I will term limit myself. So the first step is you have to decide to hire me for the job. And if you're satisfied with the performance and the results that I get for you, and you decide to re-elect me, that's great. But 6 years, 3 terms, I'm out. That's it. We have to keep fresh ideas coming into the House. We have to stop the seniority problem that we've got right now in the U.S. House and the Senate, because that's where the real power resides. But we've got to have new ideas, new energy, new blood. We have to keep grassroots patriots encouraged and stepping up through the ranks. That's what has to happen. So that gets at least 50% of the problem out of the way, besides all the bureaucrats in Washington. That's another whole ballgame. We need to address that as well at some point. But half the problem is the career politicians. That can't happen. And Al, you made a great point about a lot of our elected officials going broke and then they come out very, very wealthy. But then they want to hammer the president on the fact that he's doing such a terrible job, and he's actually doing a great job, and he's losing billions of dollars. So why aren't they asking about that when they're looking for his tax returns?
Right.
Kristina?
I believe it's absolutely shameful that individuals that are elected officials are supposed to be our public servants. I've always been a public servant as long as I can remember, since I was probably about 19, maybe even before then. But the point is that when you go into office, you are to serve the 8th Congressional District, not serve yourself. I believe in term limits. I signed that pledge. I did it for a reason, because of the fact is, we see that too many politicians are getting older and they're getting more richer by the minute, and also they're caught with the lobbyists and the Washington, D.C. people. They do not make decisions based on the best interest of our district. They make decisions based on their wallet, and that's not going to happen with me, because we have one thing in common. I say we the people. I love America. I love our state. I love our district. And that's why I'm called the homegirl here, because the fact is, I do have a passion for America. And I will do what's best for our nation and our district. Thank you.
The next one, well, you know what, let's pass it here, because you went first last time.
No problem, first every time.
Yeah. Mike, you're first on this one. What do you think of our current representative and how they have helped our area and our region for the pandemic support, and what's been done by our representative?
That's a great question. I think we're all asking that question. Our current representative told the people of the 8th District that she was a moderate, that she was going to work with our president, and she's definitely not a moderate. In fact, her voting record suggests that she's actually more liberal than AOC. And for really the first year of her term, she was non-existent, period. She's kept her head low during the shutdown. I do know that she worked the phones for the governor for people complaining for price gouging. She's put out a few articles stating that she's trying to help supply chain with PPE. But where has she been? Besides trying to impeach our president, besides writing legislation that would tie his hands dealing with Iran, when it came to the people of the 8th District and the people of Michigan, she's been absent. That's not what we need. And part of the problem is that Alyssa Slotkin is not from Michigan. She dropped in to run for this seat against Mike Bishop. And we have a similar situation right now in this primary. Ladies and gentlemen, this is why it's so important that we have people that are local, that understand what's going on, that understand the people, the needs, and can relate. One of the things that I've rolled out in my campaign is total transparency and accountability, but access. If you hire me for the job, one thing that I'm going to change is the way that I communicate. You're going to have a front row seat to everything that I'm doing. You're going to have a front row seat to all the legislation that's coming into the House that I'm going to have to vote on. You're going to have a say on. You're going to see what it is. But you're also going to have full access. I'm not moving to Washington, D.C. My family lives here. We actually live in the city of Howell. I've got a child in school. I've got a special needs son. We're not moving. So, in fact, I will be staying most likely in my office in a cot and flying in and flying back every single weekend. So I will be here to be able to communicate with you. But thanks to modern technology, communication is a lot easier than what it's been in the past. So I put my cell phone number out there, my email's out there. You can message me on social media, all different ways to get in touch. But that's how we're going to keep in touch and make sure that I'm actually in step and lockstep with you. Thank you.
If I were to grade Alyssa Slotkin, I would give her an F. She wasn't there during the pandemic. She did not rush in to be a public servant for our district. Instead, we saw one of her characteristics. Instead of building infrastructure, I want to build infrastructure here. I want to make sure that we go and lower the deficit so we are able to build infrastructure right here in Michigan and in our 8th district. We wouldn't have the flooding that we had in Michigan. We wouldn't have built the bridges, dilapidating. But what she did is she did not agree with President Trump with the Black Lives Matter when they were marching. And again, free speech is something different than this. What happened is they tore down, they went through rocks and they were demolishing Lansing. Alyssa came there to clean up the mess. But instead of agreeing with President Trump, she's more about tearing down Michigan, tearing down the state, the 8th district that she's not even from. She's actually not from the 8th district. I am. I grew up here. I've lived here my entire life, and I'm not leaving. I love the people here. Some of you are my neighbors, some of you are my friends, some of you are my colleagues. I will make sure that this district is protected, and I will be there when some pandemic occurs. That's what we do. That's what a public servant does. She failed.
Okay, so first off, if Congresswoman Slocking wants us all to believe that the pandemic is real, why did she assemble a platoon of volunteers to go into medical facilities where the sick, the confirmed sick were, to rally support for her in her rerunning in 2020? If the pandemic was real, why did she do that? Volunteers that she rallied to go into medical centers where your grandmother, your grandfather, the confirmed sick are in place, and there's this Chinese virus that's threatening all of our lives. So if that's real, why did she rally a platoon of people to go into hospitals, guised as volunteers, to rally support for her re-election? That's the question I have for her, and I'm looking forward to asking it to her in general. The next piece, she's an internationalist. Look at her track record. When she was working under President Obama's administration, 286, I believe it was 286 UAV strikes were made. Not a peep out of her. In fact, she was sent to Congress to defend the Obama administration for all of those airstrikes. Not a peep was made out of her negatively towards the Obama administration. President Trump fires 2 rockets to take out Soleimani, and then she's screaming in the halls of Congress that the War Powers Act need to be taken away from the president. Look at her, folks. She's not a constitutionalist, she's an internationalist. The only thing that she's focused on is her globalist, internationalist agenda. And that's why she's pushing for the drugs through AARP and everything else.
Got that? Who's first? Kristina, you're first. K-12 education. What do you think about Common Core, and what are your plans to address K-12 education and social engineering?
Sure, I want to go back to that last question. I also want to add this. With Alyssa Slockin, when it came to impeaching the president, she came here in a town hall and she indicated, this is the most hardest decision I'll ever have to make. No, it wasn't. She flew back to DC and she decided to waste our taxpayer money and hold hearings to impeach a president who believes in limited taxes, less regulations, and limited government. Why would you impeach an individual like that who has done such a wonderful job for our country? As to education, I know I took part of my minute there, but as to education, I believe we need to put our children first. I received a great education right here from Pinckney High School, and I am very, very honored to have that education. We need to make sure that we put the children first. We have accountability of where the money is being spent. I also believe in charter schools. I also believe in homeschooling. I believe that the child needs to be first. Too often we are not putting the children first, we are putting the money. How much money is a teacher going to receive? How much money is the school going to be able to build something? Let's put these kids first. And with this pandemic going on, how dare they not open the schools up? We need to open those schools up and let these kids be active right there in the school and be able to interact and have that schooling and education that they need.
I think the first step is to take away former President Jimmy Carter's federal education, Department of Education. The education being mandated and directed by a centralized federal government is a socialistic tenet. It's one of the 10 tenets of Marxism that I read off to you in my introduction. We need to take away the Department of Federal Education and turn it back to the states. That is how we address this, because then the states will then determine what is important to them. And if it's on the onus of the state to do it, they'll take a more invested look at their citizens. Eliminating control from the federal government is how we turn our country around. The only thing our federal government's supposed to do is provide a military and keep our borders secure. We have a $23-ish trillion deficit. If we pull our military back, and stop funding other countries for foreign aid, we can have our debt deficit paid off within 5 years based off of the current 20% income tax. It comes out to about $60,000 per American. That's what our deficit is right now. And that is definitely affecting our kids because it's affecting our households. Parents cannot send their kids to private schools if they're being forced to pay debt that will never end. We have to get smart with fiscal responsibility and take away our deficit. So we do that by bringing our military home and stop giving our tax dollars to other countries. That's how we fix our education system.
Education is near and dear to my heart. I know it is for my wife as well. We have a special needs son. We fought the battles to make sure he got the proper education for a lot of years. If we want to talk about defunding something, let's defund and eliminate the U.S. Department of Education. That's first and foremost. Common Core is a joke. It needs to be totally wiped out, gone. Let's return education back to the states, back to local school districts. And quite frankly, teachers are not the problem. It's bureaucracy that's the problem. We have bureaucracy in the state and the federal level that's putting things in our school books like the rise of Islam, but removing Christianity. We have to get rid of this indoctrination, and the best way to do that is really to have open school choice. If a school's doing it right, then that school should exist. This again goes back to free market. If a school is doing it wrong, then like any other business, they're out of business. But we have to take a hardline approach. If we are going to save our educational system, then we've got to do some drastic things. We can't just sit by and wait for it to change. It's not going to. We've been losing our schools to liberal indoctrinations for the last 50 years. And unless we stand up and start fighting to take that back, our kids are going to keep having more and more issues. They're not going to get the education. You watch TV shows where kids are asked simple questions. Who was George Washington? They can't answer the question. This is ridiculous. It's uncalled for. It's absurd. It's got to change. So, yeah, U.S. Department of Education, gone. Common Core, gone. And if the state can't get its act together, we need to look at the Michigan Department of Ed as well. Thank you.
Okay, Alan, you've got the last question. You start first on the last question. It says, what is your plan to address the major issues you see once you are elected?
So I have a multitude of things that I'm trying to restore in our nation with the restoration of the trajectory of our nation to that of constitutional values. One is the VA. Our veterans, we have thousands of veterans that live as homeless people in the country that they joined the military for to fight and defend up to cashing in their life for defending it. I want to see them be restored. The second one is transparency in the medical sector. The third one is foreign aid reform. And I have others. But how do we make it work? We have to pass these bills in Congress. You have to pass these bills in Congress to make them work. And it takes support from American citizens throughout the entire state of Michigan to get all the congressmen involved so that we can rally support to get these kind of bills passed. That's how it works. The lower chamber votes on it, pushes it up to the upper chamber. And then the upper chamber sends it to the president signs it into law. So anything that we want to restore in our nation, anything that we want to preserve in our Constitution, needs to start in the lower chamber of Congress. And when you send me up there, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to preserve, protect, defend the Constitution of the United States of America against internationalists and globalists, against futurists, so that we can take our nation back and restore America.
Mike, take the mic.
You have to have, I truly believe you've got to have an action plan when you go to Washington, D.C., or whether you go to Lansing, or whether you got hired in or elected to work for a county commission or any other elected position. You've got to have an action plan that you can hit the ground running from day one. One thing that my team and I did back in March is met with the Freedom Caucus, or at least Andy Biggs and Jim Jordan, to make sure that the plans that I had put forth are doable. And the answer was yes, they are. For Michigan, we've got to have somebody who's actually going to go work and get results. Now, I've said this as well. Are we going to get everything done? I've got a whole contract with specific items from our economy to healthcare to veterans issues to our Second Amendment and rolling back a lot of the infringements that have been passed over the years, our border security, life. This is a huge, huge task. I'm going to go to work for you every single day. But you've also got to make sure that you've got enough people that are on board with you to get those things done. So part of the trip back in March was to make sure that I could hit the ground running for you on day one and start not just on one thing, but all of it. And it's work. It's hard. And you've got to have somebody that understands that and that's willing to fight the battles every single day. Agree where you can, disagree where you must, and build on what you have. That's how we're going to get things done. That's my priority, and to stay within the confines of the Constitution. And by the way, any Democrat, liberal, Marxist, leftist, whatever you want to call it, or any Republican that wants to leave the reservation and leave our Constitution and the will of the people behind, I will go after every single time. Because you, the people, need to be aware of what's going on. As your representative, that's exactly what I will do.
First things first, I am going to protect our Constitution and actually maybe teach some of the other congressmen and congresswomen the Constitution and protect our Second Amendment. Without the Second Amendment, our Constitution falls. It is like the foundation of a house. Once that crumbles, it demolishes your house. We need to protect that Second Amendment. The second thing is in every constitutional right we have, in every liberty, we need to protect that. And number two is, I want to make sure that we take care of China, make sure that we hold China accountable. What I mean by that is, we have to stop having our drugs, our vital drugs in China made there, manufactured there. We need to make sure that we bring those manufactured jobs right back to the 8th Congressional District. And I said it before, it brings jobs to the 8th Congressional District. It's going to bring safe and healthy wealth, safety to our American citizens. But also, if we recall, a few years ago, the Chinese government, they have their low standards. It's not the people, of course, but they sent over dog food to us. And that dog food, about 4 or 5 years ago, it killed our dogs. Why would we trust any country that is not an ally of the United States to have drugs manufactured there? We will not any longer under my watch. The next is we need to make sure that we protect the unborn. We need to make Alyssa Slotkin, she is not pro-life and she does not care about the unborn. I do. And we need to protect the health and the safety of the unborn and the elderly.
Okay, let's give it to Mike. And if each of you can take just a 1 minute wrap up, we've been spending a lot of time here, so how about a 1 minute wrap up of why you should be the one elected?
Well, again, thank you for having this. I think it's important for the voters to be able to look and see at least 3 of us in this race. And you folks have a very tough decision coming up. Primaries are always difficult. So I've encouraged everybody from day one to please look at each of us running, ask questions, do your vetting, and make the best choice that you possibly can. Because we're going to have somebody that can stand up and go toe-to-toe with Alyssa Slotkin. But defeating her is a foregone conclusion. What happens after that? We need to make sure that our president is backed up. For the first 2 years of his presidency, he had a Republican-controlled House, and he had Republicans in the House that did not work with him. The president's working for the people. He doesn't have to be there. So we've got to have patriots that are going to have his back and work for the people and actually have an action plan and be able to give the people of the 8th District results and Michigan and the rest of the country. So please take some time, look at each of us, and also take note of the 3 that are here that consider this debate, this forum, important. We don't need anybody else from out of state dropping in like Alyssa Slotkin did. We see what that does. Please consider us. Again, I sure need your vote if you would consider me and take a look at all the different things, but look at each of us. And other than that, thank you for tuning in. I love you, and God bless, and let's get through this nasty battle that we're in right now.
Again, my name is Kristina Lyke, and I am running for Congress. I'm running for Congress because I'm sick and tired of the socialism, the individuals that are trying to tear down and chip away at our Constitution. We can no longer have this. We can no longer have a country that is not under God. It is about we the people, and we need to make sure that we have someone that is all about we the people, and that is myself. We've always been a very prosperous country, and a country that was, our president would say, God bless America. We heard President Trump say, when I get to be president, we're going to say Merry Christmas. And guess what? You've heard Merry Christmas for the first time in a lot of years, not during the Obama administration. Again, we need to place God back into our country. We need to make sure we protect our constitutional rights. And what's different about me is I actually do go into court every day, and I fight for these rights. I fight for these constitutional rights. I fight for guns to be back. I fight for and advocate for children all day long. And I tell you what, it is an honor to actually represent a veteran and who just came home, and it is an honor to serve the people of this district. And it will be an honor when you elect me as your congresswoman. I will serve you, and God bless you, and God bless the United States of America.
Thank you, Rick. Thank you, everyone, for coming. For everyone that's watching, Mike and Kristina, it's a pleasure to be up here with you guys again, fighting to restore our nation. Why vote for me, Alan Hoover? I served in the Marine Corps. I made it to the rank of gunnery sergeant in the United States Marine. What is our reputation in the Marine Corps? We are the few, the proud, and the brave. Only the best among us are able to go into the Marine Corps to even try to become Marines in the first place. I served honorably for 20 years. I fell under the Uniform Code of Military Justice, which is more stringent and stricter than any other law-abiding entity in the United States of America. I have a proven record, a proven track record of servitude to the nation. If you send me, and when you send me to Congress to be your congressman, I will restore the nation's trajectory to that of constitutional values and principles. I will preserve the nation's Constitution. I will preserve the Constitution, then protect it and defend it. Who do we want? A Democrat that's going to destroy our nation at light speed? Or do you want a rhino, an internationalist Republican, a futurist that's going to destroy the nation at a slower pace? I am neither of those. I am a grassroots, conservative, constitutionalist Republican, just like these other two candidates here. Send me to Congress with my proven record of service to our nation, with my 5 deployments through war, proof of the American dream. I came from nothing. Send me to Congress to restore our nation. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Let's have a round of applause for all. Okay, everybody, it's been a long night. Rick Todd mentioned to me, geez, I didn't know this was going to go on all night, you know? But you know what? We do these candidate forums to make sure that you are informed. We are going to be providing these segments of each of the segments that we've done. Remember that we've done a number of segments tonight. We had the Hamburg Township trustees, the Putnam Township trustees, the county commissioner for District 8. We had Rick Todd for the Pinckney Community Schools bond issue. We had the prosecuting attorney, and then we had the representatives for Congress in the 8th District. The gentlemen who are, Joe Malik and Dale, who are videotaping for us tonight, we'll be putting this together in segments, and we'll be sharing it as much as we can in social media. So we ask that all of you share this, and we need to let everybody know how people feel, because these are the people that represent us. And you know what, in our country we do have that thing called a vote, and you know what, we need to vote for who we think is going to best represent us. And it's interesting, all the variety of people that we've heard from all night is that we can do that. So we will be doing one of these candidate forums for the general election, and we will get the date out plenty in advance next time, so we don't have any conflicts that evening. But we will make sure that this notice gets out to everybody and everybody's there. Again, I am Rick Bowden. This was the Pinckney Putnam Hamburg Held Chamber of Commerce Candidate Forum for the election that is going to be held on August 4th. Thank you, everyone, and I wouldn't be president of the chamber if I didn't say support our local businesses, because they've all had hard times here, so make sure that you support all our local businesses around here. Thank you very much.